And hearing none. Okay, questions, guys, before we move on. Any questions on different ways to learn entities? Okay, okay. As I mentioned before, most of our customers either always learn or never learn. That's just kind of because, if you do always learning, then you definitely need someone to maintain that policy because you may get a lot of entities if you do always learning. So just be aware of that. But also remember, you may learn 100 parameters, but you may only want to enforce 2 or 3. Right? So just because you learn the entities doesn't mean you have to enforce the entities that you've learned. Okay, good deal. Let's move on now to how Advanced Web secures cookies. So this is the flow. Well, so we have several use cases for cookies. Right? If it's a domain cookie, right? In other words, if we can enforce cookies based on the set cookie header value. We can enforce cookies in flows. So a flow is going from object A to object E. So you must go from object A, B, C, D to get to object E. That's a flow. So a flow is a representation of going to different URLs. That's a flow. How we track flows is we use cookies. We also use cookies for dynamic parameters. So we'll talk about dynamic parameters tomorrow when we get to the parameters module. I don't want to get into it right now, but we also use cookies for dynamic parameters. So we talk about parameters tomorrow. Session tracking. We also track sessions and usernames via cookies. Another feature that we use cookies is brute force attacks and bot defense. Those features also, we use cookies to track cookies using those features. So depending on what feature you have enabled, Advanced Web may use cookies and or not use cookies. So let me show you the flow, guys. Let's take a look at the flow first, and I'm gonna come back to that last slide. So this is the flow for cookie processing within Advanced Web. Let's say a request comes in, a GET request to log in to the backend web application. So that request is safe, no malicious patterns, no malicious strings. So we're going to deem that request as safe. We're going to forward it on to the web application. Now, if the web application sends a set cookie header in the response, Advanced Web will hash that cookie or encrypt that cookie and make it a TS cookie. And TS stands for traffic shield. So now the client will get back 2 cookies. The cookie that the server sent and the hash of that cookie. So guys, for every response that contains a set cookie, Advanced Web will encrypt that cookie and make it a TS cookie. There's no way to turn that feature off. That feature is going to be turned on by default. No way to turn that feature off. Okay, now, second session, same client. The client has 2 cookies. They're going to now send a request for some kind of account information. We're all good. No, the request is valid. The cookies haven't been tampered with. Now, you guys remember that the vulnerability that we did yesterday where we changed the price value, right, on the client side. So let's say, for instance, now we're going to try to change a value, right, on the client side. Okay, we're going to see now there's a mismatch in cookie values. Let's say that the server sent back, let's say 100 USD. The customer is going to try to change that value to 10 USD. Thus, a mismatch in cookie values. So if for some reason the client makes a change, right, then there's going to be a mismatch in cookies. Thus, Advanced Web will trigger a violation and or block that request. Okay. Any questions, guys, on this cookie processing? Hearing none? Okay. Okay. All right. So now let me go back one slide here. Whenever we go in and encrypt that set cookie header, this is kind of how it will look. So if you go in and if you go to Fiddler and look at the request headers, you will see the set cookie header The first one is actually the session cookie that was sent from the backend web application. The next set cookie header is the TS, is the encrypted and signed version of the original session cookie. So once again, if there's a mismatch in values, right, between the original set cookie and the TS set cookie, then advanced WAF will trigger a violation. This is mainly, guys, for if someone's trying to either modify a value or try to do some kind of cookie hijacking, then we'll mitigate those vulnerabilities. Okay. Questions, guys? Okay. Now, with cookies, there's also we can call allow cookies and enforce cookies. Allow cookies are persistent-based cookies, right, that can legitimately change. Think of, if any of you guys are doing like cookie persistence, right, on LTM, we will allow those cookies because those cookies can change and they are legitimate. Okay? But enforced cookies are session-based cookies. They should not change on the client side. So for those, we can take those out of staging and enforce those cookies. So enforced cookies are session-based, right? And we can actually enforce those cookies. Allow cookies are persistent cookies, and we do not enforce allow cookies because they're persistent and they can legitimately change based on web application. Okay. Now, there's also another feature that is new to version 14. There were occasions where if I'm an attacker, right, and if I see a TS cookie, right, or a cookie that's labeled TS, then I know that in front of that web application is an advanced WAF or an ASM. If I know that advanced WAF or ASM is in front of my web application, I can now go and look at any kind of vulnerabilities that are tied to that product or that platform, right? And there was no way earlier to change the name of the TS cookie. Yeah. So once again, the value is TS, and that was always the case up until version 14. You could not change the name of the TS cookie. That was always going to be TS something. What we decided to do now, you can now change the name of the cookie, so now you can kind of fool any kind of attacker, right? Because before, if an attacker saw TS cookie, oh, advanced WAF is in front of that web application, let's see what I can do. You see kind of vulnerabilities that may exist on advanced WAF. But now I can go in and change the prefix name of my cookies to something more unique to the web application. So this is actually a version 14 feature. Okay, now it's just pretty much just trying to fool the attackers. That's really what we're trying to do.
I guess that could be part of the hardening process when you first spin up your ASM.
Exactly. Yes, sir. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So questions, guys, on the cookie processing itself or the cookie prefix?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So this setting, is it at the big IP level or at the policy level?
It's at the big IP level.
Okay.
Yes, it's at the big IP level. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, if you notice here, you're going into the big DB database. So anytime you see sysdb, that means you're going to modify the bigdb.dat file, the bigdb database. And that is associated with the entire big IP, not per policy. Okay, good question. Good question, Marco. Okay. Also, there's cookies for layer 7 DOS protection, right? And once again, by default, those are also labeled TS. If you want to change the layer 7 DOS cookie value, you can also do the same thing. We'll talk about layer 7 DOS on Friday. Good. All right, securing headers. Now, this is one, guys, if you modify this value, definitely talk to your developer before you do this. because here we're saying we're going to deem certain headers mandatory. Right? So you see we have a wildcard here, which means that pretty much we're going to deem, we're going to trust the web application to send mandatory headers. Okay? So this right here is saying that I can make certain headers mandatory. So if I take the wildcard out of the headers field, I'm only going to deem authorization, cookie, and refer headers as mandatory. If response or request comes in, let's say response comes in with I don't know, what's the response header? Let's say caching type header. If I see that with the wildcard removed, I'm going to trigger a violation. Okay. So we recommend guys always keep the wildcard in this headers field so we can trust the web application headers. Okay. So this right here is definitely one where if you modify the header values, make sure you communicate with your developer before you do this, because this can definitely break a web application, no doubt about it. We'll talk about normalization more tomorrow when we get into more of the advanced topics, or I guess when we get into the different ways to learn. The different policy building methods. We'll talk about normalization in great detail tomorrow. Well, once again, here's the examples for the refer header. It's explicit. It is not mandatory. Right? We can do signature checking on that refer header values, and we can also perform normalization, which we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But we always recommend, guys, if you can, just keep this intact. Keep the wildcard in there so we can trust the web application headers and the response. Okay, questions, guys, on cookie processing, securing cookies within Advanced WAF, and securing headers within Advanced WAF. Hearing none. Okay, guys, let's test this functionality out. And as a matter of fact, let's test it. We may have a little bit more time to get into the logging section. So, guys, this lab is from page 9-8 through 9-13. So let's take 30 minutes, guys, for this lab, and let's come back at a quarter till the hour. So I'm going to start a little bit in the logging section after this, but we won't cover everything today, but at least get a jump start on the logging section. So guys, let's come back at a quarter till the hour.